May 1998. The world watched in disbelief as India conducted a series of nuclear tests in Pokhran. The explosions were not just scientific achievements, they were political declarations. A country long seen as a moral voice against nuclear weapons had just announced itself as a nuclear power. But this moment did not emerge suddenly. It was the culmination of decades of political choices, ideological conflicts, global pressures, and a deeper struggle over what it means to be a modern nation. This is not just the story of a bomb. This is the story of power, identity, and the politics of survival. In May 1998, India declared itself a nuclear weapon state. The reaction was immediate: global concern, strategic recalculations, and renewed debates about nuclear proliferation. But for India, this moment echoed a much earlier event, the 1974 nuclear test. Even then, the world had been surprised. India had demonstrated nuclear capability, yet refused to formally weaponize or fully integrate into the global nuclear order. This ambiguity defined India's nuclear posture for decades. Some saw restraint, others saw strategy. In 1974, the explosion itself was unexpected globally, challenging assumptions about which nations could develop such capabilities. The deeper question remained unresolved. Why did India pursue nuclear capability at all? To understand India's nuclear journey, we must begin elsewhere, with the birth of atomic energy. The destruction of Hiroshima and Nagasaki transformed nuclear energy into both a symbol of annihilation and a promise of modernity. Atomic power was not just a weapon. It became a marker of technological progress. A nation that mastered atomic energy demonstrated control over nature itself, a sign of entry into the modern world. This dual identity, destructive force and developmental tool, defined nuclear programs across nations. From the United States to the Soviet Union, nuclear capability became deeply tied to state power. And soon, newly independent nations began to ask, could atomic energy be the path to development? India's nuclear journey cannot be separated from its post-colonial identity. Emerging from colonial rule, India faced a central challenge: how to define itself as a modern nation. Atomic energy offered an answer. It symbolized self-reliance, scientific progress, and national pride. But this was not merely a technical project, it was deeply political. India's early leadership, particularly under Jawaharlal Nehru, envisioned atomic energy as a tool for development, not destruction. Yet, as the text suggests, the line between civilian and military use was never clearly defined. Globally, nuclear programs often blurred these boundaries. Civilian energy programs frequently coexisted with military ambitions, and India was no exception. By the late 20th century, the global nuclear order had taken shape. Treaties like the Non-Proliferation Treaty, NPT, sought to limit the spread of nuclear weapons. But these frameworks were not neutral. They effectively divided the world into two categories: recognized nuclear powers, non-nuclear states. India refused to accept this hierarchy. The text highlights how India consistently resisted signing such treaties, viewing them as unequal and discriminatory. India's position evolved over time. Initially aligned with broader international norms, by the mid-1990s, India shifted toward a more assertive stance, prioritizing sovereign national interests. This shift was not sudden. It reflected a deeper dissatisfaction with a system that appeared to preserve power for a few nations while restricting others. One of the most striking themes in the text is the blurred line between national development and national security. Atomic energy existed at the intersection of both. On one hand, it promised economic growth, industrialization, and technological advancement. On the other, it offered military power and deterrence. The text argues that these two goals, development and security, are often indistinguishable in nuclear policy. This ambiguity allowed governments to justify nuclear programs in multiple ways. A reactor could be framed as an energy solution or as a step toward weapons capability. In India's case, this dual narrative became central. Nuclear development was presented as both a developmental necessity and a strategic imperative. Another critical dimension is the role of the state. Nuclear programs require massive infrastructure, centralized control, and secrecy. They reinforce the power of the state. In many countries, nuclear development strengthened state authority, politically, economically, and militarily. India's program followed a similar pattern. The state became the central actor, controlling knowledge, resources, and decision-making. The text also highlights how nuclear programs often depend on international collaboration, even as they emphasize national independence. This contradiction is key. Nuclear programs are simultaneously global and national, dependent and autonomous. One of the most revealing insights in the text is the critique of independent nuclear development. Even when nations claim self-reliance, their programs often rely on external knowledge, technology, or support. India's case reflects this complexity. While projecting autonomy, it engaged with global scientific networks and institutions. This challenges a common narrative, that nuclear capability is purely a product of national effort. Instead, it is shaped by a web of global interactions. The global discourse on nuclear proliferation is deeply uneven. Some countries are accepted as nuclear powers, others are scrutinized, restricted, or sanctioned. The text points out that after 1964, nuclear development was often framed through the lens of proliferation, particularly by dominant powers. This framing influenced how countries like India were perceived. India's nuclear ambitions were not just technical or strategic, they were political challenges to an existing order. Part 9. Why build the bomb? Perhaps the most important question remains, why did India build the bomb? The text does not offer a single answer. Instead, it presents multiple overlapping explanations: security concerns, regional dynamics, political leadership decisions, national pride and identity. Importantly, it challenges simplistic explanations. For example, linking India's nuclear development solely to China or regional threats does not fully explain the timing or nature of its actions. Similarly, domestic political explanations, such as leadership decisions, capture only part of the story. The reality is more complex. India's nuclear program emerged from a combination of strategic, political, and ideological factors. Part 10. The Turning Point: Postcolonial Modernity. The text introduces a powerful concept: postcolonial modernity. India's nuclear program is not just about weapons, it is about becoming modern. Atomic energy symbolized entry into a global order defined by science, technology, and power. But this process was not straightforward. It involved contradictions: dependence versus independence, development versus security, global integration versus national sovereignty. These tensions shaped India's nuclear choices. Part 11. 1998. Revisited: A Declaration of Intent. When India conducted nuclear tests in 1998, it was not merely demonstrating capability, it was making a statement. a statement about its place in the world, a rejection of imposed hierarchies, and an assertion of sovereign decision-making. The tests confirmed what had long been implicit. India was no longer willing to remain outside the nuclear order. Part 12. The bigger picture. Power, ideas, and history. The story of India's nuclear program is not just about technology or strategy. It is about ideas, about how nations imagine themselves, about how history shapes choices. The text emphasizes that nuclear weapons are embedded in broader political and cultural contexts. They are not isolated tools. They are symbols of power, identity, and ambition. Beyond the bomb, India's nuclear journey is not a simple story of cause and effect. It is a layered narrative shaped by history, politics, and global dynamics. The bomb was not just built in laboratories. It was constructed through debates, decisions, and contradictions. And even today, its meaning continues to evolve. Because nuclear weapons are not just about destruction, they are about power. And power, in the modern world, is never simple.